Hello，你好，Welcome back，欢迎回来to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on May 31st, 2023. Now, today I'm going to talk to you guys about Chinese names because it is quite complex and interesting, and I have definitely been asked more than 100 times in my life. Johnny, that's not your Chinese name, right? So what was your Chinese name? What does that mean? And why do you change it to Johnny or so on and so on and so on? And a lot of people seem to be very interested in Chinese naming conventions and people's Chinese names and how to pronounce them, what they mean, and all that stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I believe that long time ago we actually did an episode talking about something like this. Maybe in maybe fortune telling or superstition, and we mentioned a little bit about Chinese name. So if there's some overlaps, you'll forgive me. I'm getting old or older, so I can't really remember sometimes what I have or haven't addressed already. Now let's start from the simple stuff. Right? One thing to always keep in mind is uh, when when we are talking about people's name in English, you have the first name, which is the name that is well your own. You like Johnny, David, Peter, Mary, Alice, Elizabeth, whatever. Uh, 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 Names that uh, separate you from uh, other people in your family, so you can people can tell you apart, right? And then you have the last name, aka family name, like Johnson, Smith, uh, um, uh, 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 things like that, Davidson, uh, Wang, Lee, uh, Thompson, things like that, right? Those are the family name. Everybody in your family or everybody in your generation, pretty much from the same household, will share that same last name, right? In Mandarin, the family name have to go in the front, right? So in my case, for example, my family name is Tai, and my given name would be Johnny. And in this case, even though it wasn't, but just for simplicity's sake, so my in Mandarin I would be Tai Johnny, not Johnny Tai. Okay, so in Mandarin, the family name always go before your personal name. So that is one thing that if you are talking to someone from China or Taiwan, and they tell you their Chinese name, uh, let's say they tell you their name is Li Zhongsheng, then you may have that one moment of confusion. So Shen is your family name because that's how it would be written in English. The name at the end would be your family name. No, in Mandarin, Li Zhongsheng. So Li would be the family name, and Zhongsheng would be the given name of the person. Secondly, um, a lot of people think that Chinese name always have three syllables, like Li Zhongsheng or Wang Yaoyang or Li Denghui, uh, something like that. Zhang Xuemin. Uh, yes, that is very, very popular, very common. But a lot of people who were born, especially in the 70s and 80s, uh, would have only two syllables to their name. So they would have their family name, and they would only have one syllable for their own given name. Names like Wang Jie, Li Gang, Chen Shun, names like that. They are very, very popular for people who were born in 70s and 80s. Uh, it was primarily people prior to the 70s, and then starting from the 90s, that people went back to started doing three-syllable names. But during the 70s and 80s, a lot of people were trying to be a little bit more different, and they started doing two-syllable names. And then there's even a smaller population of Chinese people that would have four syllables to their name, like 西洋吹雪, 独孤九天, things like that. These are from the minority family names, usually people who had Mongolian uh, uh, or other tribes in their ancestry, then their family name actually have two syllables. Last episode, I believe we mentioned a queen called Queen Dugu. That is one case of that. Okay, the Dugu was actually her family name. So in this case, her family name is not Wang or Li or Zhang, is Dugu, actually have two syllables. So there are some Chinese people that will have two-syllable family names, so their entire name may end up having four syllables. But before you ask, no, there's never been Chinese people name that would have five syllables, and in only very rare occasions would you only have one syllable, and we will talk about that right now. So when is it when a Chinese person only is known by one syllable? Uh, Primarily in the old days, because of how sexist people were in the old days, women didn't have a name. Most of the women in the old days, they weren't given a name. They only had their family name. So this is why when you read Chinese history, a lot of the time the wife or daughter or sister, uh, women folk, they will only refer to as Wang Shi or Li Shi. It always ends with a Shi. That Shi is not their name. It's just Mrs. or Miss. That's the equivalent of Mrs. or Miss or lady. So they are known as Lady Wang or Mrs. Wang or Miss Li or Miss Zhang for their whole life. In the old days, women folks did not usually get a name. They only went by their family name. Reason being that a lot of people, when they had a daughter, they just figured, well, she's just going to grow up and then we're going to marry her off and she's going to go off with somebody and we'll never see her again. So what's the point of giving her a name? Um, so this is why traditionally a lot of Chinese women in the good old days or bad old days did not even warrant a personal name. Nowadays, definitely different. Every Chinese woman I know today have their own name. Some of them have a gazillion different names they give to themselves. Like my one of my sister, she changes her name more often than she changes her clothes. I swear. But anyway, that is a little bit off topic. Um, so yeah, primarily women in the old days, their name would be only one syllable, like Li or Wang or whatever the family name was. Another instance where some people may only be known to have one syllable in their name are people who have, for one reason or another, have their name forgotten. Okay, a lot of these is people who maybe grow up in remote part of the country, little village, little community where people don't use their name very often because a lot of time when let's say if your father is Lee and then you are his only son, uh, you might just get called Lee Jr. for your whole life, and then you yourself even forget what your given name was. You just get known as Lee. Your dad used to be Lee, and then your dad passed away. Now you are Lee, and then if you have one son, that son going to be Lee, and so on and so on. So Uh, Sometimes this is when people kind of lose the rest of their name and just get known by that one word. And we'll come back and talk about that a little bit later in this video too, because uh, it is quite common. It's more common, more easily happen than one might imagine in Chinese culture because of how we guard our name, how we are not supposed to use our name sometimes. Now, here's an interesting little superstition that still persists today in Chinese culture. It's sometimes when you ask people, well, why did your parent name you that? Because sometimes the meaning is really WTF. Okay, like sometimes you may have an English name that, like Mary or David or Cassandra or something like that, or whatever. And if I ask you the meaning, you probably will say it doesn't really mean anything. My parents just liked this name, or because my parents named me after my grandfather or grandmother. That's why. So usually in English name, meaning doesn't seem to be as important, but in Mandarin, in Chinese name, there's always a meaning. Okay, the meaning might not be very valid or might not be very nice, but there's always a meaning. There's no such a thing as, oh, we just name the person that because that's what their granddad was known as, or we named him that because it sounded good. No, in Chinese naming convention, there's always a meaning. Uh, like I said, not always deep meaning, not going to be sensible all the time. And this is what I'm going to talk about right now. Sometimes when you hear a person uh, called Li Daniu, Li is obviously the family name. That goes without arguing. You know, uh, it's just the way it is. If your dad is Li, then you will be Li. But Li Daniel, Daniel, what is that? Well, it's translated big ox. Okay, so like here right there, it's like you're wondering, okay, so what the hell? Why would you name your son Big Ox? Okay? And this is not the only one. There are a lot of these WTF names. Like uh, Zhang Ergou. Zhang Ergou. Zhang, again, family name. There's no question in that one. Ergou, what does that mean? Second dog. Okay, second dog. Zhang Ergou. Uh, so sometimes when you hear these names, you're like, what the hell? why you why would you name your kid that? Uh, why would you name your kid like Wang Tietan? Again, Wang is family name. That's okay. Tietan means steel egg. Tie- So why? Why do you name your kids something weird like that? Well, a lot of these are people that trying to first they take the meaning from let's take Daniel big ox because this one is very common. I've heard so many people named Daniel in Mandarin. Right? This is either someone from a farm family that have very close ties to oxen. They use oxen to do their farm work to pull cart and stuff like that. So they have a close relationship to oxen. And also, Daniel is a good wish, the well wish for the kids to grow up to be as strong as an ox. Okay, so in this case, the meaning is there. The meaning is first we have the connection to oxes, and second, we want our kids to grow up to be strong, like an ox. Uh, and then let's look at Ergo, right? Second dog. Why would you name your kid second dog? Well, a lot of time it's because the kid it was born a year of the dog, and maybe the dad name was Dago, big dog. Then you can't have two big dogs. So If dad was big dog, 大狗, then the son would have to be 二狗. Uh, Also, go means guardianship. It's loyalty. So people might name their kids go, hoping that they will grow up to be loyal and true to their friends. Right? 铁蛋, 铁蛋. Those of you who don't know what 铁蛋 is, like I said, iron, steel egg, iron egg. It's a kind of Chinese food. It's like a Chinese snack. What they do is they take an regular egg and then they marinate and cook the hell out of it. So it turns into like egg jerky. I'm not even joking, right? Like if you guys have beef jerky, you know how tough that stuff is. So egg jerky, imagine it's an egg, but because it's been cooked so much, it's really small. It's only about the size of your thumb, or slightly bigger than your thumb, but it have all the property of the egg, and like there's even egg yolk inside, but it is so dense and tough that you can use that thing as ping pong ball, and it's really tough, and it's chewy and it's very flavorful because of how much it's been cooked and marinated, uh, and it can practically last forever. It's preserved really well. I used to love those things when I was little. Nowadays, I don't like it because it's so too much salt, too much preservative, and also it's hard as hell to chew. Like I said, getting older, my teeth are not as good as they used to be. So 铁蛋 is this style of preserved Chinese egg, uh, and people name their kid 铁蛋, hoping that they will be resilient, tough, hard to break, hard to chew, like the food itself. So while these names sound totally stupid and totally low class, they do still have meaning behind them. But more so, there's a bigger meaning, bigger reason why people would name their kids something stupid like this, something low class like this, like 大牛, big ox, or 二狗, second dog, or 铁蛋, iron egg. It's because there has been a long-standing Chinese superstition that if you name your kid too good, if you give your name like something like godly jade, like 神玉, okay, or 天山, like God's mountain, sky, heavenly mountain, something like that. It's really bad luck. Your kid may die young because you are offending the God. You're not supposed to have a name that sounds better than the God's name. You're not supposed to have a name so beautiful that makes the gods jealous. In Chinese religions, the gods and goddesses are a little bit like Greek, Roman mythology. Like when gods and goddesses get angry or jealous, they do naughty things, they do bad things to mortal. So that is the case in Chinese culture too. So a lot of Chinese people would rather avoid um, risking the health and safety of their kid, and so they would prefer to just go with a low class, common sounding name like Big Ox, then the gods and goddesses would be happy, rather than giving them a super beautiful name like Godly Mountain, and then some god or goddesses wake up one day and Godly Mountain, how dare you, a mortal, dare to have a name like God or Godly? If you are so godly, then we are going to bring you to heaven, and you shouldn't be down there in the mortal world. So, uh, does it sound silly? Yes, I know it does, because you don't grow up in in our culture. But if you grow up in our culture, yeah, okay, it still sounds silly because it sounds silly to me. But look at it this way. If everybody is telling you, don't give your kid a beautiful name, otherwise your kid might die early, would you really risk that? Even if you think it's silly, would you really risk that? Or would you say, okay, I don't really believe in it, but just to be on the safe side, let's go with Big Ox? Now let me take you through how the components of a Chinese name, because this one is very interesting. Now let me preface this by saying what I'm about to tell you, the different components in the Chinese name and the rules and stuff like that. This is traditional. Uh, Pretty much people stopped paying attention to that as much since the 1970s, 1980s. Nowadays, because of freedom of speech and freedom of this and freedom of that, people kind of go overboard and try to name their kids all kind of crazy, stupid things, uh, and uh, they no longer go by the traditional naming convention as much. For example, I'm not even joking about this. I wish I was. There was a Chinese couple who had a son, and they, because this couple, their lifelong goal was to one day make enough money to own a BMW. So, when they had their son, they decided to go and register their son as Wang BMW. Wang BMW. They and they went to the police station because that's where you go in China to go get things registered. You go to the police station to do a lot of the paperwork. They go to the station, and a lot of the cops there were trying to talk them out of it and trying to tell them, hey, this is kind of crazy. Like, you can't name your kids BMW. And but the couple, they were really adamant. Who says I can't? Which part of the law says I can't call my son BMW? And the cop said, well, it's not about the law. But think about when your son's going to school, he's going to get teased. He's going to get bullied because of this stupid name. Right? But no, this couple, they were so adamant about it. And so in the end, the police officer had no choice but to register their son as Wang BMW. And it wasn't until like a few months later that they came back to the police station, and the police officer said to them, "Oh, what's up?" And they say, "Oh, we want to change the name. We register for our son. We want to register him with a different name." And the cop said, "Oh, see, I told you. I'm glad that you finally came to your senses. BMW is a stupid name." And the couple said, "Yeah, it is. Wang BMW, 4 syllables. That's weird, right? So we are just going to take away the W. So we're going to call him Wang BM." Like I said, I wish I was joking, but apparently this like a real story. Really happened. Okay, and just happened recently too. So this is how crazy people are nowadays with naming the kids in my culture, that they no longer go with the tradition. But traditionally, a Chinese person would have four parts to their name. They would have four separate components to their name. And we are going to take a quick look at that because this is an interesting part of our Chinese history, the history, etymology of a Chinese person's name. So, first and foremost, your family name. This one already talked about. We don't need to linger too much here. If your family name is Li and you go with Li, even after you're married, even like for women, it's not like in Western tradition. It's not like in the Western world where you get married, you take on your husband's family name. No, in Chinese culture, even if you get married, you hold on to your family name. If you really want to, you can add your uh, husband's family name in front of yours. So let's say your husband's name is Wang and your own family name is Li, and you can say you're now Wang Li, uh, blah blah blah. But you do not ditch your own family name even after you get married. Right? Um, One notable example of something like changing the family name can happen is sometimes, for one reason or another, people may agree that when a child is born, let's say the child might go with the mother's family name rather than the father's family name. But those are uh, extenuating circumstances. For example, if I marry a woman and then I find out that she is the only child in her family, that's it. They don't have a son, so there's no one in her family to carry on that family name after her, right? So because like I mentioned, she would hold on to her family name even though we get married, so that's fine. But after her, there's no one else. If all our kids are going to go with my family name, so in this case, if I am a very generous person, and if my parents, because it's not totally up to me, I have to ask my parents and grandparents to agree to it. That if everyone in my family agree to it, then we may say, okay, the firstborn child will go with my name, and then the second-born child go with your family name. So this will at least give her family someone to carry on their family name. So family name is pretty sacred in Chinese tradition, and only in special circumstances like this one uh, described above, where you might be okay to change someone's family name. Uh, Traditionally, if you just go ahead and change your own family name, it may be a crime punishable by death. Okay, it can be seen as disloyal to your family, and some people have been put to death for doing that. So changing your family name was a very big deal. Um, so family name in Mandarin is called Xin, Xing, Xin, uh, and like I already mentioned, that always comes as the first syllable in your name. And then after Xin, there's a Ming, Ming, Ming. This is the name that you were given as a child. So using the example before, 大牛, big ox, ergo, second dog, or 铁蛋, iron egg, or whatever. This is the name your family, your parent give you, your given name, Ming. And this come after Xin. So 李大牛, Wang Ergo, blah blah blah. So what if you don't like the name you were given? Let's say you grow up and now you are a multi-millionaire, and you don't no longer want to be called Big Ox because it sounds totally ridiculous, right? Yeah, Chinese people in the old days thought about that, so they give you a third name component called 字, 字, J-E. Uh, 字 is a name that you are allowed to give to yourself, but you are only allowed to do that after you become an adult, and usually after you already established yourself in the world. So take me for example. My given name, for example, it can be Johnny. Again, we'll touch upon that in a little bit. But let's, for the sake of this narrative, let's say my given name was Johnny, and let's say I grow up and I start doing music, and I think, well, there's a lot of Johnny out there, like there's a lot of Big Ox out there. I need to do something more unique, so I changed my name to Johnny Tiger. Okay, so this would be 智, my 智, a name that you give to yourself. Um, Now, uh, 字, traditionally, when you want to give yourself a 字, your self-created DIY name, uh, this have to that you have to follow a few rules. Like I said, one is this can only be done after you are an adult and you have established yourself. Because your 字 have to makes sense. Right? You can't just name yourself anything you want. You can't be a farmer and then you name yourself the Jade Emperor or something like that. Like that's not going to fly. Um, So it have to make sense. Also, your 字 cannot contradict or be too far removed from your given name. So, for example, if your given name was Big Ox, then your 字, when you give yourself a name, then it can't be something like godly mountain or heavenly jade or something like that, because it got nothing to do with your original name. Um, and we can even look through history. A lot of time when we look at Chinese heroes, they have something like well, let's look at the uh, uh, Chinese god of war, one of the famous Chinese general, Guan Guan Yu. Uh, Guan Yu is a Chinese war god. Okay, Guan is his family name. Yu is his given name, given to him by his parents. Now, when he became a warrior, he decided Guan Yu just sounded kind of boring, so he gave himself a new 字. He gave himself a new name called Yun Chang. So now, no, he's not just Guan Yu, he's Guan Yun Chang. Okay, so Yu, his original name means rain, and Yun Chang, the name he gave himself, means long cloud or thick, heavy cloud. So cloud and rain kind of go together. So when you give yourself a 字, you need to make sense, and you need to be somewhat closely related to your originally given name. So if for example, if your original name has something like dragon in it, then maybe your 字, your name that you pick for yourself, can have something to do with sky or wings or fire or something like that. If your original name have dog in it, like ergo, second dog, then you want to give yourself a 字. It can be something to do with loyalty or something with to do with ferociousness or something to do with wolf, something like that. Okay, so that's just some of the general rule around getting a 字 for yourself, the third component in your name. So we have 姓, your family name, your 名 is your given name, and then your 字 is your DIY name that you pick yourself. There's even a fourth component to most people's name, traditionally speaking. There's a fourth component called how, How, how. Okay, how literally translate as reputation. In this case, it means nickname. Okay, how you cannot give yourself a how. Okay, it's not like you can give yourself a nickname whenever you want. How is a nickname that given to you by other people, by friends. So most people would only get a how once they are a little bit well known, or they have done something notable and someone might have given them this new nickname. Like in my case, a lot of people in my teenage years called me the smiling tiger. So that would be my how, because how because of how happy I looked whenever I was fighting. So a lot of people called me the smiling tiger. In true to Chinese convention, that would be my how, my nickname gained through reputation. So sometimes when you hear people that they introduce themselves as uh, uh, the Iron Hand or the Iron Fist or the God's Voice or uh, 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 gold lions. Okay, very impressive stuff. And you think, how did they get that name? Like, did their family name them that? Usually not. Usually they get that because they did something so impressive that someone somewhere gives them that nickname, and that become their how. Okay, so the four components of the Chinese name is 姓, family name, 名, given name, zhi, the name that you pick for yourself, and then hao is the name other people call you. Now, for the last part of this video, I want to talk about this whole thing surrounding our English name. Those of us who are Chinese, because okay, a lot of people ask me this question: Are you ashamed of your original given name? Why did you change your name when you come to Canada? The brutal and honest answer, and the short version is we change our name to make it easy for the rest of you to address us. Otherwise, you would have a hard time. Okay, that is really so. This is one reason why a lot of Japanese people don't have to change their name. Some people from some other culture they don't have to change their name because their names are easy to pronounce, like Yuki, okay, Yoko, uh, Suzuki. Things that those things you already know how to pronounce. That they don't have to change their name. But when let's say if I don't change my name, then my given name, my birth name was Da Yo, right? Da Yo. Now that doesn't sound difficult. Unfortunately, most people that are not from my culture can't pronounce it exactly like that. It's going to come out like Da Yo, or Da Yo, or Da Yo, or Da Yo. Okay, now you may think that's not a big deal, but in Chinese culture, it is a big deal because, like I previously mentioned, uh, Chinese words are very sensitive to tones. If you change the tone just a little bit, the whole meaning is changed. Okay, so 大有, the way my name is supposed to be pronounced, means well, 大 means big, 有 means wealth. So big, wealth, wealthy, have everything. Someone who have a lot of stuff. 大有. If you change the tone a little bit and change it to 打油, then suddenly it turned into fetch oil. Now go fetch some oil. You go get some oil from the kitchen, 打油. Uh, or you change it, 打右. Well, means 打 means to attack. Yo means the right side of your body. So as you can see, you just get the pronunciation right is not good enough. You need to get the tone right. And if you are still saying that, well, that's not a big deal, so what? If we Well, then you don't understand how sensitive this is, right? I already mentioned that for Chinese people, our name are very sacred, very sensitive. So much so that there's a lot of taboos and uh, who can call our name and who can't and stuff like that around that. We'll get to that in a few seconds. So that is one of the major reasons why we change our name to Johnny or David or Mary or Alice. So there's no need for us to suffer having to listen to someone mispronouncing or uh, getting the tone wrong on our name all the time, because when you hear that, it's really, really offensive, right? And uh, being offended aside, when they get the tone wrong, it changed the entire meaning of your name. And next thing you know, uh, you don't know how to deal with this, because if someone called me 打油, I, I'm thinking, should I spend the next half an hour trying to get this person to pronounce it properly, or should I answer it and just let it fly? If I spend the next half an hour lecturing this guy on how to pronounce it properly and why it's so important for them to pronounce it properly, it seems like I'm jumping down their throat for nothing. It seems like I'm not uh, respecting the fact that they are not from my culture and they shouldn't know how to pronounce my name, right? But if I answer to that, the next thing I know, everyone at work going to be calling me Dayo, and that's really annoying because everyone's going to be getting my name wrong. So that's a very sticky situation. Secondly, a lot of us grow up being teased endlessly at school by people making fun of our name because Chinese children do a lot of that. Let's say my name is Dayo, but I'm going to school. A lot of kids will call me Dayo, just to change the meaning of my name. So a lot of us kind of a little bit traumatized by kids from our own culture making fun of our name to begin with. So next you have someone from a different culture going Dayo, Dayo, it's just going to eventually bring back a lot of bad memory. So it is to avoid a lot of that unpleasantness that we choose to pick a name that people can actually pronounce properly. More importantly than all that, however, is how sacred our names are to us. So much so that I don't know the name of my aunties and uncles and cousins. I know them. I know their family name because we share the family name. Uh, I know what people call them, some of the nicknames and stuff like that. But I do not know their full given name. I only knew my mom's given name because I heard my dad call her that. But for the longest time, I thought my mom's name was Haiyan because that's her that's her nickname, and my dad used to call her Haiyan, Haiyan all the time. Means Haiyan means seagull, by the way. Um, so for the longest time, I thought my mom's name was Seagull, and it wasn't until one time when my dad got really, really angry and called her full name Wu Meiyu, I realized my mom's name was her family name Wu, and Meiyu, beautiful jade. I didn't realize that was her name for the longest time. So Chinese people, we guard our name very carefully, and only a certain people in some circumstances can call our name. For example, if I don't use Johnny as my English name, if I stick to my Chinese full name as Dai, I mean, that's Dai is my family name, not Tai. Okay, some of you because we have to change that to Tai, because Dai just sounds like someone telling me to go die all the time, and so we change it to Tai. But my actual name is Dai, family name Dai Da Yo, Dai Da Yo, right? So if I keep that, then I eventually going to run into a situation where some of my students, when they need my attention, they'll call me 大友 or 戴大友, and that's going to piss me off because that's not okay. Right? In my culture, that's not okay. You do not address your teacher by their name. Right? You have to either call them teacher, or master 戴师傅, or something like that. You can't go 带大友 with your teacher. You can't go 带大友 with your brother even. You can't go 带大友 with uh, your uncle or someone older than you. So it it's very sensitive. In my culture, names are very sensitive. So the only people that really can just call me 带大友 would be my parents, my older brother, my uncles, my aunties, uh, even my lover. Most of the time, they can only really address me as 大友. They're not really. Oh, it's not okay for them to call me 带大友. Like if they call me by my full name, either they are really pissed off at me, or I can actually get really pissed off at them by calling my full name. So it's very sensitive stuff. So before we end the video, let me quickly answer this one because I know some people are going to ask. So okay, so if you can't call each other's full name, how do you do this? How do you address each other? There's a lot of ways. Okay, for example, 大友 it's okay for people who's in the same age range, my equals can call me 大友. That's totally okay. But younger people cannot do that. Younger people younger than me not allowed to call me 大友. So in this case, younger people can maybe call me uh, uh, 戴先生, Mr. Dai, or 戴大哥, Big Brother Dai, uh, or something similar to that, or call me by my nickname, uh, Tiger. That's fine, right? Um, a lot of time in socialization, when people are socializing in Mandarin circles, you'll take the person's uh, family name. In my case, Dai. You'll say Lao Dai means hey, old man Dai, or Xiao Dai, Dai Junior. Uh, you'll just add a word onto that family name, or you might take the one syllable of the person's given name, 大友. A lot of people call me 阿友, or 小友, uh, something like that. They'll just take one syllable, because how sensitive we are with our uh, given name and our whole name. So that is one big reason why we change our name to we add onto an English name, because then we are not so sensitive about that, because that's not our given name. If I walk into the office and someone goes, "Hey, Johnny Tai," that's not going to piss me off. That's just okay. Whatever. Johnny Tai is like not my given name anyway, so you can do that. But if I walk into the office and someone says, 戴大友, and that's just going to get me all kind of pissed off. So I hope that this has been a somewhat educational and interesting episode, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow on Toy Thursday. For now, 谢谢 and 再见.